Demi Lovato released a song called Swine. And I'm not going to play it, but I'm going to read some of the lyrics and bleep some stuff out. But it's very crass. It's also not good. I heard a little bit. Live Action was talking about it, and Ben was talking about it in his show. So I've heard it. It's just I think everyone has their own opinion. I think I don't think it's a good song. And I think it really doesn't bode well for the pro-choice movement. So, again, it's called Swine. God forbid I want to suck whatever the bleep I want. God forbid I want to bleep whoever the bleep I want. And if he comes, that's not like come home. I guess I gotta be a mother. There's so many people who say, I'm pro-choice. I don't like people using it as birth control, but I just think a woman should have the right to choose. Now, when you start like chiseling away, when they say that, like their argument, eventually you might get to people just saying, well, I just think she should be able to choose. And they are actually okay with people using abortion as birth control. Like, they know it's icky, but at the end of the day, they'll support that because I've had this conversation with many people that, like, they'll say that, and it's like, well, what do you think? People use birth control because they want the freedom to have sex, but they don't want a baby. So if you have an abortion because you had sex and now you don't want a baby, so outside of like, if you were sexually assaulted and ended up pregnant, because obviously you didn't instigate the sexual activity that resulted in the baby, or if it's some kind of medical emergency or life-saving situation where, you got to do it early and induce the baby or something. Even I don't like it, like the mercy killings, eugenics sort of reasons either, but even that would be included in not being a situation where it would be, birth control. But if you get knocked up and you're like, oh, I'm not married, or I got to finish school, or I just got a promotion, or I don't know how I'm going to be able to work and have the baby, or, I don't really like this guy that I'm with and he doesn't want the baby, I don't want the baby. Like, whether it's a one-night stand or someone you were in a 2-year relationship with, like, that's still birth control. You're still having abortion for birth control. So once you kind of start chiseling away and you keep going deeper in the arguments, they'll just be like, well, I just think a woman should be able to choose. So when people say they don't think that women should be able to use it as birth control, I'm like, why? I asked one woman one time, I'm like, why don't you just say you're pro-life with exceptions like medical reasons and sexual assault and like life of the mother, because then they're still like, because you're like against like 5% of like reported abortions. You're against 5% of it. So or you're for like 5% of it, right? So if you're only for 5% of abortions out of like 1 million in the US every year, why not just say you're pro-life with these exceptions? Because when I continued having that conversation, they really were just like, her body, her choice, right? So if you really don't think that women should be using it as birth control, you should be pro-life with exceptions. But if you believe that women should be able to, like, oh, well, they were having sex but their birth control failed, which, by the way, only like 0.5% of like 50%, 49, 50, 51, 49, something like that percent of women who have an abortion were on some kind of birth control at the time of them, getting an abortion. So only about half these women are actually like on something, taking preventative measures, but it still doesn't matter. Just because you use abortion as backup birth control doesn't make it moral or right or whatever. So most of these people do believe that women should be able to use the birth control. But why go through the song and dance? Because they know that it's icky, that it's wrong, that it's immoral, that it's, that it makes you sound selfish. And loose. So Demi Lovato is just like ripping off the band-aid and saying, I want to be a whore. And that should be my business. And if a kid comes along, you expect me to be a mom? You expect me not to murder that kid? You expect me not to yeetus the fetus? So that attitude, I think, to most people is revolting, to just go out there and say it. So making a song, putting this on a record, I'm not saying people won't enjoy it, that there won't be girls who listen to it, to rock out to it, to play it at the next like Women's March or Planned Parenthood conference or something. I'm not saying that people won't enjoy it and won't, vibe to it or whatever, and that she's not emboldening this sort of degeneracy. But there's people who want to say, well, I think women should have that choice, or they really sympathize with women because even though they don't want to say, like, I don't think you should have an abortion if your birth control fails, even if they don't want to go that extra step, in their minds, they just believe that women wouldn't just callously have an abortion. Like, they think of it as like really sympathetic situations. And I'm not saying women don't have very sympathetic situations. Even though you're in a sympathetic situation, that doesn't mean that situation justifies actually taking someone else's life, right? But most people think about like just really awful, terrible situations, maybe, and they empathize with the woman, and they're like, yeah, it's just like it's a necessary evil, right? They look at it that way. But the truth is that there's some people out there who just want to live brashly and without consequences, or with and I don't see consequence like it's a bad thing. Consequence, it's just a result of your actions. People get so triggered when you use that word. I'm like, maybe you should read Super Kid, because they went through that life lesson. It's a consequence doesn't have to mean something bad. It's just a result of your actions. So if you engage in procreation, you shouldn't be surprised when someone is created. That's how it works. So wanting to go out there and live the life however you want, and then being like, I have to be a mother. And she just wrote that. I guess I gotta be a mother. So this is just really dark, degenerate stuff from Demi Lovato, who has had a lot of issues throughout her life. She grew up in the business and had a bit of a wholesome image, like in the front of the cameras, but behind the scenes, she's, doing drugs and using and all kinds of other stuff, partying. And she's been to rehab and been out, and, she's had like back and forth, in her life. And so, not too long ago, she was going by they, them, which I guess she got tired of doing, explaining to people what it meant or whatever. So she just stopped recently, I guess. But, now it's just like an embrace of this degeneracy. And I, feel for her for the struggle that she's had, but this self-worship that she's indulging in hasn't made her happy. It hasn't made her safe. It has endangered her life repeatedly. And so I know people will look at me and be like, oh, you're so bound because why? Because I can remember what my days and my nights are like, because I'm not vomiting in front of a toilet, because I'm not addicted to drugs. I'm very fine with my life, because I can have fun without downing a gross beverage and loosening my inhibitions or whatever. I don't get it. Like I like myself enough to be sober and to enjoy my own company. I don't understand. But I don't know, maybe it's just projection. I don't know. Anyway, back to the lyrics. Bleep what I think. I don't know a thing. The government knows my body. No, it's okay. It's better this way. I'm only a carbon copy. Even if I'm dying, they'll still try to stop me. Which, like, every law, every state that has restrictions on abortion do have exceptions for life of the mother. in case you didn't know, the only reason why I guess it wouldn't be on the book is because there's no restrictions on abortions, period. So they wouldn't need to have, life of the mother exception. People being mad at the government, and like in the music video, I guess they're going to like burn the witch sort of thing. But people are okay with the government banning you from using your body to kill someone else in any other circumstance. It's just with abortion, they want the government to allow them to kill their child. So, but the right to bodily autonomy isn't absolute. You can't just use your bodily autonomy to just go violate someone else's rights. So that's where really where the question is, right? Does your bodily autonomy trump someone else's right to life? And I think the answer is no. It's just, why in this particular circumstance are we saying that we can't recognize this individual's right to life? And I understand the head-to-head of it and the discussion of it. I do. But I don't really think there's a good logical reason for abortion. Like, I know there's all these philosophical reasons for bodily autonomy and personhood and etc. I just don't feel like they really hold up. I think the best arguments are like heartstring, case by case kind of basis. But again, because you feel maybe for that person, but the question is, does a difficult circumstance rise to the point where you get to override someone's life, and not just override them, but to go out of your way to kill them? And I gotta say, like 99% of the time, that's a no for me. So I just don't think. So even if we banned abortion and allowed it for particular reasons, I think that's better than just saying everyone should just be able to do it for whatever reason. Obviously, one is better than the other. Do we even hear ourselves? My life, my voice, my rights, my choice. It's mine or I'm swine. So she's not a pig for just being someone who wants to sleep around and live her life and do whatever with just acting like an animal, humping whatever the heck she wants. But she thinks she's a pig because people say, hey, you have a child, don't kill it. That's very strange. That's very strange. Picture your faith, imagine your God, and even your holy Bible. It's suddenly banned. Do you understand? Now, doesn't that sound entitled? It's your book. It's my survival. There's a wonderful group called Secular Pro-Life. If you are not a Christian, if you're an atheist, you can go like check out. I make a lot of mostly non-religious arguments about abortion anyway, but Secular Pro-Life, they're run by atheists. It's run by atheists. They have guest columns from atheists. I don't know if all their guest columns are from atheists, but it's run by atheists, and they're against abortion. And I know pagans against abortion, and all sorts of folks who I follow as well. So you don't need to be religious to know that life starts at conception. Christopher Hitchens was a famous atheist who said that feminists have a contempt for science because they deny, that life starts at conception. He's like, there's no other place where it can be. So that's not a religious opinion that life starts at conception, and it's definitely not a religious opinion that abortion kills someone, because that's the point of the entire abortion. An abortion is a medical procedure that it ends a pregnancy resulting in the death of an embryo or fetus. And if you have a spontaneous abortion, that's referred to as a miscarriage. Most people don't use that terminology, but we're not talking about spontaneous abortions. We're talking about induced abortions, and it's induced because it's deliberate. So we all know that it kills a living human being. If it wasn't, obviously it's human, is the same species as its mother, and it's obviously living because that's why you want the abortion. That's the whole point of it. So there's no point being coy. Right? So that's not that's not a religious opinion. It's not a religious argument. Now, whether or our morality and whether someone deserves life or not, like, we can debate those things, but why do you not deserve protection in the womb, but you deserve protection outside of it? because if we want to make a survival of the fittest argument, we could do that. But I don't understand why you think you're always going to be the one on top. And when we pick and choose who gets to have rights, we know what happens. Like, I'm Black. I know my history, bro. I know my history. And the United States of America, we get to pick and choose who's a person and who's not, and who gets rights and who doesn't. So I think it's in our best interest to be as fair as possible. And when we come into existence as human beings, that is at the point where we're going to say, okay, well, you have rights, you know, at least right to life. If you don't have a right to life, you have no other rights. You have no other rights. So right to life isn't a right to live forever. No one can have that. It's not a, you know, like you can't say like healthcare because right to life or something, you know, that's a commodity. But a right to life just means you have a right to not be killed. So going the religious route, I know a lot of people just try to pin it on religion. And I know a lot of people say, you know, I'm pro-life because I'm Catholic or I'm whatever, and they pin it on their faith. But that's because there's a lot of ideology associated with their faith. And people should get better at breaking down their ideology or the philosophical arguments within their religion. Like, well, what I mean is this is why I believe that all human life is valuable and why it needs to be protected, etc. They could go through that route, why we need an objective standard of morality. Those are arguments that I make in my book. And of course, God is blatantly against abortion. And if you're a Christian and you don't know how to really argue for your side of things, there's some really important chapters that you guys can seek out and get for yourself. So go ahead and check out that book, available on Amazon and Barnes and Noble. People can definitely, of faith, can definitely make the argument without bringing up religion, but people will just say you're religious anyway. Even people at secular pro-life have been accused of being religious. Again, if we're just doing battle of the fittest, battle of survival, and no one is has any inherent value, why does Demi Lovato think that she has inherent value? like if someone took her out, would authorities care, or is that just why should there be justice for her but no justice for anyone else, or for the justice for the most innocent? And you can make your argument why, and then people can make your argument against. We can keep debating. Human beings, we can debate all day long about this stuff. We got to grow them. We got to raise them. We got to feed them and bathe them. And if you won't, they call you a witch and burn at the stake in Salem. Thought by now they change, but we're still waiting. You don't, well, grow them, yes, I guess. Raise them, you don't have to. But by the way, the grow them thing, once the baby's in your womb, that's just, you know, nature taking its course. But all you have to do is not kill that person, right? If you can just hang out for 9 months, and I know it changes your body, you know, there are risks to pregnancy and all that stuff. That's a fact, but there's risks to you having sex, and which one of them is getting pregnant, but STDs and all sorts of other things. And the mental hangups that obviously people have when they sleep around a bit. But yes, you grow them. You don't have to raise them. You can take them to fire station. You could take them to the police station. You could there's a, what do they call them? What kind of laws? Safe harbor laws, you know, that you can take the baby elsewhere. You could have an adoption plan. So you don't have to raise them. You don't. I think it's best that you do, like you pull yourself together and you raise your child, and hopefully you do that in a loving environment with a father, you know, that you're married to, like best case scenario, right? But I know not everybody does that. So there's these other options for you. So you don't have to raise them. So you don't have to feed them. But if you do need help feeding them, there's lots of resources certainly for that. But this grow them, raise them, feed them, bathe them, that's a really good reason for parents, for all these like social justice folks in schools who feel that they're their kids, and they like, you don't raise them, you don't feed them, you don't bathe them, you didn't grow them, so no, you don't get to read them This Book Is Gay or I Am Jazz. Like the parents you know, have a say. But that's not what the song is about. Give these Mother bleepers, heck. My life, my voice, my rights, my choice. It's mine or I'm just swine. This is so dumb. My blood, my loins, my lungs, my noise. It's mine or I'm just swine. Undercompensated to domesticated. The bleep, underestimated, overregulated. The bleep, undercelebrated, hated, dominated. The bleep, we're infuriated, got us activated, get up, ever dedicated, newly motivated, get up. And if you're awake, then I'm so glad you made it. My life, my voice, my rights, my choice. It's mine, or I'm just swine, or I'm just swine. My blood, my loins, my lungs, my noise. It's mine, or I'm just swine. And that is her song called Swine. So women have agency, and they can. It's very easy to not get pregnant. It really is, if you don't want a baby. But they want to have this freedom in their sexual deviance without any sort of I'll use the word again, consequences for their action. But if you procreate and you make a baby, the baby exists. The baby exists. So if you want to add like killer on your tab and add homicide, you know, you can unfortunately do that in some places in this country. Not all places, thankfully, but her video and her lyrics, it really reminds me of this video I once saw of a man outside of an abortion clinic. It was a black man who was protesting, and he was, telling all these women there, he's like, you guys don't even believe what you're saying. You just want to be popular to your friends and etc. And I just thought he a lot of stuff that he said was great, but I think he really had a point, because so many people go with the crowd, and I think a lot of people instinctively know that this is such a terrible, awful thing, but people are trying to break that stigma, and people are trying to get to a point where, there's no restrictions. There's a case in the UK where a woman did telemedicine and got abortion pills. She claimed that it was only it was early gestation. You're only supposed to take the pills if it's been 10 weeks or something like that. It could be dangerous for the woman, and it might not work. So that on the baby, so you're really not supposed to take them past 10 weeks. But she was between week 32, 34. So she got her pills and her baby died. So she's being charged. And so the pro-abortion people are like, oh, never again. We should never let this happen. And we should get rid of these restrictions. But this woman had full agency. She even Googled, will I go to jail for, killing a 30-week baby or something like that. So she had full agency in what she was doing. So the question is, a baby who could hear her mother's voice, that you could feel kicking and moving in your womb and all that stuff. Is it okay for a woman to be able to kill her baby? A baby that would be born in a few weeks, that she could drop off somewhere, that wouldn't have to raise it. She could put up for adoption or something. Should that mother be culpable for what she did? And I think so. That's a crazy situation. But the abortion folks, instead of going, oh yeah, she broke the law, yeah, 32 weeks is really bad, they're like, we should get rid of these restrictions. How dare they prosecute women for knowingly killing their fully viable, healthy baby? So we're in a complete moral decay situation, but thankfully there's a lot. This is a very informed, I think, pro-life generation. When I went in January, and thank you to people who helped me go there, to Right for Life, the March for Life, and then I went to the Students for Life Summit, and they were really smart. They're really wise. They had good arguments, standing for life. So I think we're heading in a really good direction. I'm really impressed with a lot of people who are so passionate. I'm glad that me speaking on these issues has impassioned people to be more pro-life and to speak up. I'm very grateful to people who said I've changed their mind on the issue. That's probably the best compliment that I get, other than, someone saying I've accepted Jesus Christ as my Lord and Savior. But, I'm glad that I'm out there changing people's, hearts and minds on this issue. And I'd like to do more. I think it's horrific that so many have been killed. throughout these years. I think it's horrific, not just the disproportionate amount of Black babies that have been killed, but just any baby that has been killed. And we've had over 60 million since Roe v. Wade was passed. And I'm so very happy that it was overturned. I'm so very happy that it was also overturned on my sister's birthday. So it'll be a day I never forget. And someone said a single-celled organism on Mars is considered life, but a baby in the womb is not. Yep. People, when they say life, they mean it in such a philosophical sort of way. I think, well, some people just like go full anti-science on the topic. They go full anti-science, but some people they talk about life and they mean it in some kind of philosophical sense, like what do we consider a life? And I don't know, what do you consider a life? and why is yours one versus someone else's? Like they'll consider like you need personhood and all the kinds of different stuff. And I'm like, but they inherently have these things that you say they need to be human to be alive or whatever. It's just that they don't possess those things particularly at that moment. And what does it matter once like if you were killed or something, why seek justice for you if you're killed? If you're no longer here, what does it matter? Like if someone like robbed you in the street and stole your wallet and they need it for their friends or their family or whatever, and you die, of course your family is mourning you and stuff, but you're no longer conscious. You are just as conscious as an aborted fetus. But we would still go out and try and find that person who committed that crime. Now, crime is so bad nowadays, and we have these woke DAs and prosecutors and stuff. Who knows what would happen? But in a perfect world, we go out and find that individual, and they'd be put on trial. Now, I guess they could say, "Well, I needed the money. I did this for this reason, or whatever." And if we go back to the survival of the fittest thing, they can make an argument on why it was good for them to kill you and to take your money, and now they're paying it forward for themselves and other folks. They could make that argument, but we expect justice to be done because it's wrong to end your life. Even though you're no longer here, people still care. And I don't think it's just because people mourn you. And if our mourning and us caring is what makes your death wrong, then what we do as pro-life people, it makes it matter all the more if the silence makes them meaningless. So it's not a good argument for people shutting up. It's just one for us speaking forward, speaking more and coming forward. Anyway, thank you guys so much for last thing I want to say, I guess, about the Demi Lovato thing before I let you go and in the live is that a lot of pro-life people will say we need to make abortion unthinkable. That's what Live Action and other folks say a lot. And I agree with that. We need to work to make it unthinkable. And but there's going to be people who never quite get there. We're not going to get everyone to agree that, yeah, we should get rid of this. We're just not going to. And so when I look at like Demi Lovato's song and the embrace of just deviancy and debauchery and just the self-idolatry, like she talked about Christians and other folks and their religion, but it's not the fact that I have a moral authority that bothers them. It's the fact that I won't ascribe to their moral authority, and I won't I don't think they're worthy of that sort of self-worship to lay a child down at their altar of self. So their issues that they want to self-worship. And I just don't think they're worthy of that innocent life. So and I have an article on my website called Quest to be God that dives more into that. But there's going to be some people who are never okay. And just like in the Civil War, they did have to work, and they were able to change some hearts and minds when it came to slavery. And the abolitionists worked really hard. Like the town of Ripley, John Rankin, Pastor Rankin, that town was a stop on the Underground Railroad, but they really preached against it. They really preached against slavery and stuff, and preached that everyone was, equal in the sight of God and stuff. So, people had the right heart posture to work to end slavery. But of course that couldn't happen everywhere because the South was like really sticklers on it, obviously. And there was some preacher that said they couldn't get revival to really break out in the South because their hearts were so hardened because of slavery. So you're not going to get everyone to get there, and you're going to make a difference. And I'm glad for the difference that we can make. But for the people who we can't get them there, they just have to be mad. We just have to defeat them, and they just have to be mad. People were mad when they lost their slaves, guys. People were mad when they lost their slaves and they couldn't enslave them anymore, and they lost their free workers, and people were ticked off, but it just was what it was, and they were obstructing freedom from human beings, and they just had to be mad. So just like slave owners were mad, there's going to be women who are just mad because they can't go out and have an abortion, and they'll get used to it. They'll get used to it. Women will be more careful about who they sleep around with, when they sleep around with them, and using protection. And men will be more careful about it. That is what will happen. That is what will happen. And people will if they get pregnant with people who like each other, they'll make life changes. They'll make life plans. That there was a story that the New York Times, that it was either the New York Times or the Washington Post, but they covered the story of this woman in Texas who couldn't have an abortion because of the heartbeat bill, and she ended up having twins. And they wrote it as if it was some kind of just, I don't know, awful story, or that's how the left was looking at it. But I'm just like, this woman has 2 babies now. She's getting married to her boyfriend, who was working at a burger joint, just going to skate parks, and now he has a life plan and he's going to get a career in the military. And I'm like, this is a miracle of family. People growing up and learning to care for each other and to care for someone other than themselves. So people will get used to it. People will get over it. Now, will people do back alley stuff, or which back alley is a term, not just people having abortions in alleys. They actually go to the abortion clinics through back alleys. You can't stop people from committing crime. Murder laws haven't stopped people from committing crime, or laws with theft haven't stopped all theft from happening. But having laws on the books do stop people from committing the purge, right? Just the whole thing being a purge movie. So I think a ban is important. We have to push for a ban, and not everyone's going to be gung-ho for it. But as soon as we get the power to do so, I'm not coy with my end game. Abortion is not a good thing. Abortion is not a good thing. So you can't change everyone's hearts and minds. We should try. We should keep doing activism and keep trying to explain to people the humanity of an unborn child, which most people know, because if it's your baby, you want it. And if it's your baby, well, not everybody wants their baby, but if it's a baby in your room and you want it, it makes all the difference in the world. And it's so sad when they die, but it's even sad for women when they kill it, but they have a totally different attitude. It's so much so that there was a YouTuber, Chelsea Hart, I think it was her name, Chelsea Hart, and she had a big thing with this other YouTuber who she had slept with, and she was upset because she was vulnerable to him, and she explained, she's like, I told you how, I opened up to you because I opened up to you about when I lost my child and stuff. And so people dug into it deeper, and her losing her child was an abortion. And so then you had people who were pro-choice, who had abortions, who were upset at her for saying she lost her child when she aborted her child, because they view it differently as a miscarriage. And they're like, how dare you pretend like it was a miscarriage? And, which she didn't say it was a miscarriage, but in her video, but that's definitely the feel that you got. So they know that there's a difference. The intent is obviously different. They're aware of that, but they know that baby is alive and it's valuable when they want it, but they think it's a different thing, and it's kind of uterus to fetus when you don't want it. So people are very morally depraved around the situation. I don't think everybody's a monster who goes out and gets an abortion, or everyone's a monster who they supported. I think they got a bit of a twisted sort of thinking, which a lot of same is true for a lot of things in history. But one day, hopefully, when we have kids and they have grandkids, and we're talking to our grandkids or whatever, and they look back at history and they're like, you guys killed how many babies a year? And we'll just be ashamed. hopefully we'll just be ashamed. Like how people want to tear down statues today, like Robert E. Lee want to tear down those statues and stuff and be upset about slavery and stuff. And they're so ashamed of it and what America's participation and saying stuff like America was never great. Like, you know, hopefully there's kind of some of that same energy in the future. Like, I can't believe you guys did this terrible, horrible thing. And I can't believe that there's so many people who are still so gung-ho for today, knowing all the information that we have.
Thank you for watching my video. Make sure you go to blacktnews.com and check out different articles, different videos, and also check out our merchandise. If you like what I do, you can also support the website on the donate page. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and also that notification bell. God bless.